Good morning.
Morning, or good evening.
Yeah, good
depending.
afternoon to this side of the world, I guess. Very welcome to one of hopefully many webinars that we will be running here from rapidshape. My name is Ignatius.
My name is Robin.
And we will be covering some basic topics from the initial installation of a printer regarding Netfabb orientation. Okay, so the topics which we will be covering will be what's needed to have Netfabb installed, how to go about installing Netfabb. We're going to cover some licensing information, so what's required in the licensing perspective of Netfabb, how to set up a machine in Netfabb, and ultimately selecting a material to create your first print job. Okay, so just to cover some basics regarding the webinars, we have cancelled out our speakers on this side to prevent any reverb from happening on our side and basically on your side. And we would ask that you refrain from asking high-level or in-depth advanced questions till after the whole webinar. If it's a simple question, please just address it to the chat box. We will answer it after each section and then progress through the whole process like this. Okay. So without further ado, I think we can get started.
Yes. So, first of all, I'm gonna cover the topic of what's needed. Of course, you need a PC and there's some special system requirements from Autodesk. We need the installation files for the engine for Netfabb, and we will figure out where to get them. So, just a quick short look on it. These are the system requirements for the current version of Autodesk Netfabb 2020. So I just copied them from the Autodesk website. It's easy, you can also all the time access the Autodesk website. I will just quickly have a look into where you can find it. So you just open the autodesk.com website and you just have a look for all products. So in the all products section, you can just type in the search field Netfabb and have a look for it. So as soon as it's loaded, you can just open the site of Netfabb directly and you will find a lot of information, of course, on this site. To just get the information about system requirements, you will find it if you scroll down a little bit, the system requirements on here, and if you open it, you can directly see what's required for your system. No, I don't want to participate. So the system requirements, easy to see now. You can find it here. You can find it also in this webinar, of course, now. So easy as that. We will just continue directly, like I mentioned already. We just in general need two files to install the Netfabb properly. It's the Netfabb installer itself and it's a rapidshape engine installer.
Which is very important.
Yes. So for now, the Netfabb installer is Netfabb 2020. We already have it on our PC. But where to get it from? So usually you always receive a USB stick when you receive a machine. On the USB stick, there's a backup also of this USB stick on a printer, but on the USB stick there's everything you need for the installation. So all the files regarding what we will cover also later, but in the moment we're just covering the file of the installation of Netfabb and the rapidshape engine installer. If we have a quick look on it, just that you can see how the stick is looking like inside, so what's the thing it's covering. This is the stick, and you can see there's user manual, maintenance plan, and so on. Most important for now, folder number 7, Netfabb software. In here you can find Netfabb installer and rapidshape engine installer, as well as a README. So maybe you've also seen there's a link directly for the Knowledge Center. So let me quickly cover this. Why is there a link to the Knowledge Center? In the Knowledge Center there's always the current version of these two files available.
Correct.
Depends on when you ordered your machine or when your machine was delivered. There might be a not current version of these two files on the USB stick. So please, if you've got the chance, visit the Knowledge Center, download it from there. in order to get access to the Knowledge Center, there are always the credentials available on the printer directly. It's just in the More Functions menu and you open the Knowledge Center. You can see the symbols on the right of this page, of this slide. So there will be the credentials visible, and with these credentials you can just log in on any web-enabled device. Of course, it's the best now to do it with a PC, where you need these files so you can download it. So let's just also have a look at this, so you get a little bit used to the Knowledge Center. So this is the Knowledge Center now. Depending on if you're logging in as Strawman or as rapidshape, it will change a little bit. Yeah. This is now the rapidshape page. So if I just log into this page, now we're using a different password than you will, or different username and password you will see on the printer, but it will totally look the same. So let us just quickly have a look for the password. And in the Knowledge Center, you will then have a download section. So there it is. So when I'm logged in, I have a typo maybe. That's live. So this is the Knowledge Center. You can see all the big buttons where you can select the things. Now, of course, there's a lot of information which we don't need in this basic webinar. For now, we just head to the section Downloads because we need to download our Netfabb and rapidshape engine installer. So easy as that. The downloads, it's most likely only the Netfabb in this section. And you can see, as soon as you open this link, there's different, so let me just scroll a little bit. There's different settings, different folders, like the Netfabb rapidshape engine, and of course Netfabb itself. You can see there's older versions available still. Yeah. But as usual, our recommendation is use the latest one. In this case, it's Netfabb 2020. So you just open this folder and you will find directly the link to download the exe files or the installer for Netfabb 2020. Now let's go back, because what you can also find in here is the Netfabb rapidshape engine, which Ignatius already mentioned is important to have. So you can download it in this section. Also, you will see the release notes. So what has been changed in the latest update. Yeah. Easy as that, you can also download it directly and have it on your PC. So that's most of the things we can tell about installation files and where to get them. Yeah. I think there's no questions yet about this topic.
Yeah, I can't see nothing as of yet, but I just had a quick interjection. Yes. So what happens if I am able to download Netfabb 2021 from Autodesk directly? Is this an option?
Yes, you can download it. Netfabb or Autodesk is always pushing their updates on their own side. Yes. As I already mentioned, in Netfabb we recommend always to use our software which is validated and tested already. Because it might be that Autodesk is already releasing an updated version which was not fully tested with our engine. And in order to avoid any issues in working with the rapidshape engine, we will always release the tested ones in the Netfabb, in our Knowledge Center, so there's no issues.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay, so I think we can just jump directly to the next topic and I will hand over to you.
Thank you. So we now know where to obtain our installation data packages. So the first thing that we will be looking at is installing the Netfabb software. So Netfabb itself covers the slicing of our job files. So that's the first thing that we will initialize now. We just have a video that illustrates the installation process, as it takes a bit of time and it just makes it a bit faster for this webinar purpose. So we'll just go ahead and play that video now. So here we can see we have the installation files that we are needing, and we just double click it to install it as by default. And again, it's a fairly straightforward process. Yes. You just click and follow the instructions as it is presented to you. There's nothing significant with the Netfabb installation process. Just note that it takes a bit of time, maybe 5 to 10 minutes for the installation process. But again, it's fairly straightforward. So now at the end of the installation of Netfabb, it is important to note that we will close the installation and we will not run into the actual Netfabb software yet. So here we are just selecting the directory and it runs the installation. After the installation is completed, you will see that we are prompted with the Start Netfabb suggestion at the bottom, or Launch Now. In this instance, we don't want to do this because again, we want to first install the engine installer, as this is housing actually, or this installation process houses all the material parameters and the relevant machines that are available. So we will close the installation window now, so you can just see that we closed that, and then we will run through a live installation of the engine installer now. So we just have that open. Yeah, can I? Yes, wonderful. So you have the engine installer file. I'm just double clicking that and letting that open. So it's pretty straightforward, same as the Netfabb installation, but it's again very important to do this step after you've installed Netfabb, but before you run Netfabb. Okay, so we say continue. We will auto detect the install directory. We get the green check mark. Please note that if you do not get a green check mark and it's a red cross, then you can manually go and identify the install location of that Netfabb version that you had previously run. Also note that if you do maybe get an error during this auto detect, you can just select OK. It will most likely give you a green check mark confirming the correct install directory has been located. You only need to go into the manual location finding if it's a red cross. Okay, so we'll go next. And here it gets quite interesting because here we can compare the older engine version that you had on the machine and compare it with what will be loaded onto your machine. In this instance, we are going to load this final digit 431 version onto this machine. It's already loaded on here, but for this demonstration purposes, that's how you can see it. So we go ahead and install the engine now. And after the installation has been completed, you should find a installation successful statement in the text area, and then we can go ahead and start Netfabb. So I can just select it directly from that installation. So let us go back here. So what we did now is we installed Netfabb. We then canceled that whole process after the installation. We installed the rapidshape engine installer. Again, this is where all the valuable information of machines and materials and material parameters are located. Then after that, we are prompted to go and start Netfabb. But before we go straight into Netfabb, there's just something that we need to cover regarding the licensing, okay? Because, because the way that Netfabb works is you need a license as it has an annual subscription, but you don't get it on the installation date. So the way that it works is as follows. The machine or the printer gets installed. The technician or whoever is doing the installation needs to, with the end customer, fill out a handover report. This handover report is a hard copy that comes with the printer, but there's also a digital copy with the USB drive that comes with the printer as well. And this needs to be filled in with the contact details of the main operator of the printer, because once the handover report gets sent to our rapidshape service admin email, we will then forward that information through to Autodesk. Autodesk will then create an account and contact the main user. So the contact details of whoever's filled out the handover report, and then be requested to register with Autodesk. This is very important, okay? Because what we've had in the past is maybe protocols have not been submitted, or the registration email has gotten lost on the customer side. So it's just very important for all the customers to verify in the inbox, in the spam, in the deleted folders, just for the first 2 to maybe 3 weeks. And if they have not received anything in that time frame, please contact us or your distributor so we can get in contact with Autodesk directly and find out if there was any miscommunication there or what's going on, so we can, resolve the issue as fast as possible. Ultimately, after the registration that the customer has done at Autodesk, they will then be able to just log into Netfabb with the user account details of Autodesk, which makes it a lot easier than working with license keys or other such things. So it's just a login like you would log into any other software, so to speak. Okay, and that's basically the cycle that's involved here. Okay, so I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, I can see there's one question in the chat.
Ah, yes.
So Köhn is asking, what happens if you, for instance, use an older version of Netfabb and the engine version? So I'm assuming, Köhn, you're also talking about Netfabb is the older version, not only the engine, but also Netfabb is using Netfabb 2017, for example. And what happens when I then install the new engine? Or install the engine with the engine install? Is that correct? Just let us know in the chat so that we...
Yes. So if that is the case, if you are referring to using an older Netfabb with a newer engine installer, no, not really.
Okay, only the engine.
Okay.
So I think it's we will just cover both topics in an easy way. So first is you got the new Netfabb but an old engine.
Yes.
That's, I think, the use case for here.
Okay.
And the other one is I got an old Netfabb
with a new engine,
but I want to install new engine installer. So the first one you started already with.
Yes. So using an old Netfabb. No, using a new Netfabb with an old engine is possible, okay? But we would definitely recommend that you use the latest engine file because it will be compatible with that latest Netfabb version.
Yes, and there won't be any installation issues with the new engine as long as it's using the latest Netfabb version already.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
But then when we're looking at older Netfabb,
yes, there's at older Netfabbs, for example, just to cover also this topic, if we're looking at older Netfabb examples, so 2018, for example, was used a lot of time, and we use the engine installer from today. It will just restrict the download. So because the engine installer will just be installing the version which is compatible with the current Netfabb version. Correct. So Netfabb 18 won't be able to run the latest version, as there's of course some redundancies on the new structure of Netfabb 2020, for example, to work fully with our new possibilities in the engine.
Yes.
So I hope that covers both questions maybe already. And there's also a question now from Antonio. Okay, let's first get a quick question of Antonio, and then we will answer your second question. So Antonio is asking, how long is the registration link from Autodesk available before it expires?
Okay, so generally speaking, it's about 4 weeks, where they then ultimately take your contact information and rewrite it with some random gibberish, okay, which allows you then to not register once you find that mail. So what to do in this instance is you contact your distributor or you contact rapidshape, and we contact Autodesk and inform them this email address that we have registered with this type of a Netfabb license. We would like to reiterate that or reset it. So then Autodesk will make that license again available to be registered with that account mail address.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so then one more question from Köhn. He's asking if an older engine could be recognized and then updated automatically to a new one.
Unfortunately, this is not implemented because we have a lot of end users that have a very strict workflow. And you can imagine that if they have a strict workflow and we randomly update their Netfabb engine without them approving it or wanting it, then there could be bigger issues for their whole protocol in the end of the day. So it does come down to individual users wanting to update on their own account, like at their own will. We make all the information available though to them when a new engine file is available, and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, it is up to the end user to make a decision individually.
Yes, exactly. Okay, perfect. I think that's all the questions for now.
Okay.
So then let's just continue to the next section. So how to set up a machine. Because now let's just transition to Netfabb again. We can see we started Netfabb. It's asking us after the single user, we have to select single user in order to fill in our credentials we will then have. But it will ask us for logging in now. The thing is now, we use it now, the webinar, as a normal installation. At the beginning of an installation, you will not have the data or not a licensed email account for Netfabb because, or most likely because it's a new user.
That's right.
So for this case, we can just close this and say we will start a non-licensed version. So non-licensed is a bit restricted, but still you can work with it until you receive your license without any bigger issue. It's just slower for now. So if we then have a look into Netfabb once it's open, you can see just a clear overview. Oh no, we used it before. A clear overview, and it will start with an empty. So it will start like this with an empty My Machines setup. So it's important to know that in Netfabb, you will have to set up a machine. You will have to set up, first of all, the machine environment, because you got two things you have to set up always. It's a machine environment, which is corresponding with the type of your printer.
Yes.
And you have to set up in this environment the machine configuration, which is directly corresponding to your printer.
Yes.
So in order to do this, at first we will have to add, like I said, the machine environment, then a new configuration. There's two possibilities to add a new configuration. So the configuration you can do is once manually. This means user input is the full input. You need name, you need the scaling, you need the optical correction, and of course, if you want to work over network, the IP address. The more handy one is the automatic import of the printer already. So we already have got an exported printer from our production. When they produce your printer, the file is located also on the USB stick, and you can import it. So already including in there is a name, which you can still change whatever you want later on. There's the scaling already included. There's the opcode already included. So there's no confusion anymore. Which opcode do I need to load if I got multiple printers, for example? And still user input is of course IP address, because it's different from customer to customer location. So how does it look like in Netfabb if we just follow this presentation? So at first we set up a new machine. So we click on add machine, and for now we'll just select, for example, a Stroman P30 Plus. I will add this one to my machine. So this is now a machine environment. I add it and I can open. You can still, if you for example misclicked it or did something wrong, you can still delete this environment again by just clicking on this delete button over here. That's no issue. Also, you can do not show this dialog at startup if it's just not valid for you to see this anymore once you set up.
One printer, for instance, and you're only using one environment, then there's no need for you to see this window on every startup, and that's just a bit more customizability.
Exactly. So then we will just open this one. This will take a little bit because, as Ignatius already explained, in the engine there's everything from platform, from visuality, from material setup and material parameters included. So this needs a little bit of time to load all this data. Once this is loaded, we can directly see what's the engine looking like, and also the first message will appear. Let's have a look. There's one printer still set up, so let's just delete them. So this is usually the first thing you will see. there's a message for you which is telling you there is no machine set up yet. Do you want to set up a machine? So yes, of course, we want to set up the machine. If I now click on yes, I will be guided directly into the manual adding of a new machine configuration. So as I said before, in the manual adding, you will now have to fill out the name, the scaling, and the optical correction. All these things you can still find on the USB stick. So for example, if I just open where I have to load the optical correction, you will find on the USB stick a folder which is called OptCore. In there you will find the optical correction file, which you just select, and then you open it. And then it's linked to your machine. For the setup of Netfabb, you don't need to link it every time. It's once and then it's linked. So we won't do it now, because what we want to show you is once you say you don't want to address this manually, you want to do it automatically, you just close the first message and say, no, I don't want to do this. And you can go to the machine setup. So there's this little gear on the right side of machine. If I open this, I will get into the menu of the machine library. In there, of course, I can still add a machine, which is leading me again to the same window, the manual adding of this. So this is what I don't want to do now. I want to show you the importing of a machine. So I will just also have a look on the USB stick you receive. So I will click on import and have a look for the R-shape library file. So the R-shape library file is, like I said, containing most of the information already. So if I now just open this one, the machine is directly in my library. Let's just open this real quick to have a look at it. I can double click it, or I can click on edit. So and now I can see what's already been done. So the name is already preset. You can change it whatever you want, as long as you can recognize your machine if you're working with multiple machines, of course.
Very important, yes.
Also, the scaling for X and Y is preset, so you have no need to figure out from the USB stick what is the scaling values and copy them manually in here. As well as the optical correction is already loaded and linked to this machine. The only thing you need to input is the IP address, as mentioned before, and of course the username and the password. Username and password for the communication is needed in order to send files from the PC directly to the printer. If you're not filling out the correct password or username, there will be an error. So make sure in the manual there's the password and the username, and you can find it there to fill in the corresponding data, and there won't be any issue. So we will just save it for now. We didn't change anything, but we will save it. So I set up the printer, I can click on close, and I will see on the right side there's my machine set up, and it's compared to the other settings, it's grayed out. So why it is grayed out and why does it look like it's inactive? It's only looking inactive because I can't select another machine, because only one printer I set up for this environment.
Yes.
This means Netfabb will, as long as you load this environment, just directly select this printer, as there's no other printer available. Just to show you, if I add, for example, a test, let's call it test P30 Plus, and save this as well. And as soon as I close this, the Netfabb machine library will update itself, and suddenly this becomes visible and active. So now I can select in the drop-down menu which machine I want to use.
Yes.
So in this case, of course, we will use the one which is not our test machine, as this is preset properly. So I think, one thing more to mention is that also, depending on what machine you set up, you have got possibilities of selecting different platforms. In this case, for P30 Plus, you have got the standard platform and the surgical guide platform. You can just select by switching between them however you want, and back to the standard one. So really, really fast process and not complicated at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so
we did have one question here, just quickly before we continue with the material library. Antonio was asking what the difference between a licensed and a non-licensed version of Netfabb is, and I think it's fair to say that there's just, so the amount of cores that your PC is using for the slicing process is going to be limited. So when Robin mentioned that there's going to be maybe some functionality or it might run a bit slower, he's just referring to the amount of cores that are being used during the slicing process of said job. So instead of, for example, using 8 or 16 cores, you will only be restricted to 2, and this is, as long as you're using the non-licensed version, you can still create jobs, you can still print what you want to print. It's not affecting your prints at all. It is purely restricting the slicing time of that job. Okay, I hope that answered the question for you.
Okay, so if there's no questions at the moment, as I can see in the chat, no questions for the machine setup, I will just quickly hand it over back to you, Iggy, and you can continue.
Okay, so we have now set up the machine for our machine environment. So now we know what machine we're working with. The next thing to establish is what material we will be using. And this is where the engine file is. Again, the best option for the engine file is to have the latest version, okay? And we will make that clear in the next slide. So what we're looking at is, again, in the same area of Netfabb, just 2 sections below the machine drop-down list, you have the material option, okay? So here we will go and initialize a material, and let's go and show you how that's done. So when we look at Netfabb, again, it's in the same space that we were talking about before. There's no material set up yet, so I'm going into the little settings gear to go and view my material library. So whenever I create a material, it will stack this material library, which ultimately will become available in my drop-down list in my machine environment. So I'm going to go and add a material. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to identify what material I'm looking for, okay? The best way to do this is take the material container that you have, read exactly what is described of that material on it, and go and find the exact same one in the list, okay? What makes this very important is that all the materials in this list have been approved by us at rapidshape to work on our printers. If you're selecting a material that's not on this list, or you're selecting a material from this list that's not corresponding with the material that you're printing with, you're going to have a bad time, or you'll have unexpected results. Okay, so for this instance, let us use the plus sand UV, which is the share. Actually, no, let us be a bit more adventurous. Let's use the P Pro Surgical Guide Clear. Okay, so in this instance, I know that this is the material that I want to use, and it corresponds with what's on my material bottle. Next thing to do is to name it. So the thing to note with naming it, yes, simple names always work, but please note that whatever you're calling this material in this work environment will be saved across all work environments. So if you are using the same name for the same material but on a different machine, there will be conflicting information, and it'll tell you cannot save that name, or it has already been used. So this is a fairly straightforward name, very good, clear and concise. That's good for me. The next thing to look at is what post-process unit are you using? There's a drop-down box here, and we have the flash box option, which is a generic flashing cure box, and then we have an LED box, which is more known to us as a rapidshape cure or a P-cure, whichever one you want to use. It's just important that this is selected so that the printing process compensates for the post-process, because both of these post-processes affect that printed model in a different way, and to have reliable accuracy and quality, it's best to ensure that you are selecting the correct post-process in your material configuration. Okay, so for this instance, let's use the LED box for my post-process. The next thing we look at is the parameter set. Now this is the part that becomes very important, because here we have these numbers 19/04. This is referring to the date of this validation that has been approved. Okay, so this is referring to, yes, 2019 April, and when we drop down, theoretically, if you're updating your engine from a really old one, the one that had been selected previously will state that it is outdated and that you will be encouraged to use the most recent parameter set. Okay, this is very important because as material developers grow and they use different materials, different chemical consistencies in their material, so does the parameter sets change. Okay, so if you want reliable quality prints, it's beneficial to use the latest parameter sets. What is significant for some of our suppliers or distributors, we have a validated and an open parameter set. Validated is strictly for a validated process. When we're looking at a rapidshape machine, this will just have the parameter set date. It won't have validated or open. Okay. But in this instance, we're going to use the validated, and then you have a layer size option here. But with most materials, this is not changeable. What has been pre-selected is the best for that material. And then, which we will cover in a future webinar, because we can go into a lot of detail of the material parameters.
Yeah.
We want to keep this as basic as we can. So we're going to cover more of this particular topic in greater detail in a future webinar. But just to mention, there's object properties and process properties, which will become available when you select an open parameter, or if it's a different manufacturer, you might have that as an option anyway. Okay, so I've selected my material, I've selected my post-process, I've confirmed which parameter set I want to use, and I've named it. So that's good. I will save that now. Here I have that material in my material library, which I can close, and immediately I can see that that material is then available for me to use by default. Again, similar to the machines, if you have multiple materials, you will have this drop-down box become active, but because we only have one, it stays grayed out because this is the only option. Okay.
So, I can see there's one question from Wesley in the chat. So he's asking if the selection of the post-queuing method is affecting the printing time directly.
No, but good question.
Yes.
Okay. So let's go and have a look real quick. We'll just go into that again. So when we look at this post-process selection here, it's not affecting the printing process, okay? Because when you are post-processing model or indication of your choice, that post-process is actually aligning the molecules in that design, which makes it a little bit smaller, okay? And depending on which post-process option you are using will determine how much shrinkage or behavior basically within the model will occur, okay? So when you select the flash box, the heat will be really high intensity, and then it just has a different effect on that post-process for that particular print, and it needs to be compensated in the printing process because the layers will be the same. It is purely about the shape that we're looking at. Okay.
Yeah. So the printing time won't be affected.
Short answer.
It's just shrinkage, yeah.
Yes.
So the shrinkage is just being adjusted.
Okay. So I'll just set that and close that. All right.
Okay. So no question in the chat, but maybe for the viewers who have a closer look in Netfabb, there's one little sign I can see over here. So in Netfabb, besides the material, so there's one, in this case, it looks like a light bulb or sun. Maybe just explain what this is.
That's a good point. Okay, so if you did notice this, there is a little sun or light bulb here to the right of the material. This is directly related to what post-process option has been set up with this particular material. So for instance, we can go and add a new material, which is exactly the same, We'll just name it a little bit different. And we will use the flashbox as the post-process unit. We'll save that. We'll close this. Then we can see, okay, so naturally you have the drop-down list that becomes active. But between the RS box and the flash box, that little icon changes. So it's a bit of a shortcut for the users, not to need to go into the material library to go and see exactly what post-process they have set up with this particular material. It just allows them for a faster identification of the post-process. So again, so the flash box to us represent lightning bolts, and that's why it's represented like this. And the cure box is more of a consistent active light, like the sun or bulb.
Okay. So I think that's it for a quick look into how to install Netfabb, how to set it up, how to set up machines and material.
Yeah.
You can still ask us questions. We still got a little bit of time left, so if you have got some questions, just let us know. We also, if the questions are now a little bit more complicated, we can switch on our speakers. So you can also ask us questions. We will deactivate the mic, of course, while you're speaking.
Yeah.
And afterwards we can answer you. So if there's anything where we can help or where you need some information, just let us know. And I will just activate our speaker now. Okay, so Antonio, one question from you is how to change the micron size in the open material. So you're talking about the layer thickness, I think.
Okay, so I think we can also then cover maybe some of what Andre was talking about this morning.
Yes. So let's quickly go back to Netfabb. Let me just quickly add a new material. So let's say you installed the latest engine and your material is not available in the drop-down list. So you just add a new material, and in here you can't find your material. You will, of course, checking with the latest engine installer if there's an update available, download the installer, install it. If the material is still not available, then it might be because it's not been tested and validated at rapidshape and Straumann. So in order that the customer still can use the material they want, there's this open material setup as Antonio was mentioning. So in the open material setup, you can set up a little bit more things than in the normal setup. So validated is fully closed, open material is a little bit more, not open material, but the open parameter set in the normal material is a little bit more open. And the complete open material configuration can be any material. Let's just call it like this, any material. In this case, you will have to figure out, maybe with the material material manufacturer, what curing time and what curing energy is needed. We cannot give you just by showing us the bottle and showing us the material name any information of how to cure this and how to print this, because it's a little bit more difficult to have the fully analysis of a material. So, but still, customer can get in contact, for example, with the developer of the material and ask him if there's any information about the energy they need to cure it. So you can set this one up in here with this little drag on here. So you can also set up a lot of other things, which is, of course, a little bit more advanced. It will just not fit into this webinar as it's more basic, but we can still have a look in this in one of the future webinars, I think, to get a little bit more an idea of what will happen when I change something in there. So in the process properties, there's not much more, but object properties is really important. In order to change in here the layer thickness, as you were asking, Antonio, it's just in this drop-down menu. So in the drop-down menu, you can select between 25 and 150 microns. Important, as soon as you change the layer thickness, of course, the energy, the required energy will also change. So if you want to get in contact with the material manufacturer, please forward him all the information you can give to him, as layer thickness, as power the printer is printing with. So with P30, for example, in this case it's 20 watts. so that they can maybe provide you with some better information.
Yeah, or recommendation for
Or
how to
recommendations.
cure this particular material. Please note that if you are going to go down this path of printing with an open material that is not approved or has not been verified by us, just note that we cannot guarantee that it's going to print because A, we haven't tested it, and B, it takes a bit of time. Okay, so if you're going to do this, beneficial to start at the low range of 50 and then work your way up, because you can imagine that if you just jump straight to the middle and you're printing something really brittle or really strong and it adheres too much to the reservoir, you will and could and possibly, which we have seen in the past, just damage that Teflon layer, which ruins the reservoir. So it's beneficial to go from a lower value, work your way up, rather than starting at the top or jumping around. But by all means, it is there to work with. So if you do have somebody who's making their own material and it corresponds with the curing frequency that is in these printers, so for the P30 plus, we're looking at 385 nanometer, and it's just important that the material will cure with this frequency, because otherwise you're not going to really have anything curing. Just please note that. We do have a question here from Dave. He's asking, what's the best way to handle RFID tags that are not being written or that's not being read, or it's not on the material bottle?
Yes. So of course there's still the way from now. For us it's Strawman view. So if you're using the validated workflow, of course there will be restrictions. And one of the restrictions is if there's no material written to the reservoir, there will be an error and you're not allowed to print. So in order to avoid this, you can still select in here the open parameter set, which will then also let you know that you're not working in a validated workflow anymore.
Yes.
So this is important for Strawman view. It's not a validated workflow anymore. You can work with it. Then it will tell you can start the non-validated workflow.
Yes.
Okay? So that's the best solution for now. Of course, if the RFID is just reading on no reservoir, so every reservoir you've got and it's not working, please contact the service, because this then we need to have a closer look in to see what's really going on. If, for example, it's missing on the bottle, make sure that you, next time when you buy it, most likely when the RFID label is missing, you got an old bottle which has not been updated for a longer time. Ask them if the RFID label is on there. Usually it should be. So only for older materials. And if something is not working with the RFID, use the open parameter set.
Yes, please just ensure also that your machine is running on the current software, because we have had this in the past where our software on the machine might be outdated and it doesn't correspond with the new RFID tags that are on the material bottles.
Yeah, that's right.
With the latest software, this has all been resolved. So just verify this. You can also find this, what version or what the current software should be on the machine in the release notes that are available also. We just have one more question from Antonio. You saw it?
Yeah, so it's again about the open material, I think, because he's asking if we can go below 25 microns.
Yes. In this instance, I mean, this is short answer, yes. Long answer, it needs to be processed, and because with our open parameter, we don't have it go below 25, because out of our experience, below 25 becomes redundant.
Yeah, it's not
in
necessary.
the sense that you're spending X amount of time more trying to print something more accurate, but it's not that visually representative of that.
Yeah, maybe as an example, you know with which pixel size you're printing. I'm not sure what the P30 Plus has got. I think it's around about 60 to 70 microns.
There's something around.
So if you're printing with 60 to 70 microns in X and Y, the quality in X and Y will always stay the same.
Yes.
So the Z-axis is going below the quality. So the quality or the general quality of your part will never be way better than the lowest quality you can achieve with, for example, now in this case then the resolution.
Yes.
So it's really not making any sense to go below this if the printer has got the X and Y resolution of a little bit bigger than the 25 microns. Which is, like Iggy already mentioned, the resolution we've got is totally fine to use with all indications at the moment which are available on the market.
Yes, but please note though, if you are looking at printing at thinner layers or printing thinner layers, this can be achieved. You will just need a unique developer setup for your version of Netfabb, which will allow that. But this is something that is, yes, this is something that can be covered in a future webinar. We again trying to not get into too much detail on each topic as to not sidetrack the whole objective of this. There was another question here from Wesley. He's asking about the selection of the post-process, the cure via the versus the flash.
Yes.
If the incorrect process is selected, what will the negative outcome be?
Yeah, so negative outcome, size is not fitting. That's really short. So as Ignatius explained, what's the most important thing which will, or what's the only thing which will be changed in selecting LED box or flash box is shrinkage. And therefore in the shrinkage you will have got a different outcome.
Yes.
Which means if you're printing a model, it will still look good. It will still print, but after curing it with the wrong device, for example, then it won't have the size as it was loaded in Netfabb. So this will differ.
Yeah, this is strictly important if you're creating surgical guides or splints that go directly into a customer's mouth. If you're looking at just models that you want to use for show and tell, and you're printing all the models on the same printer, then this can be
show and tell. That's
because if you're printing it at the same time with the same shrinkage, then this won't affect your finished product. But you can imagine that if you're printing with printer A using the wrong post process and then printer B with a correct post process, then these parts might not fit quite as securely as you'd like them to fit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So easiest explanation is just use it with the same curing machine you selected. So there's no issue even in show and tell if you want to show, for example, that the stump from this machine is fitting into the model of the other machine.
Yeah, that's very important. Yeah. All right. We do have some more time if anybody had any further questions. Again, so if there's something that comes to your mind that you later on today or maybe tomorrow or something, please contact your distributor or contact us directly with your questions, and we will be more than happy to answer you as best as we can so that everyone is basically on the same level.
Yeah. So I can see there's one more question, which is a real good question, because Antonio's asking about the R-shape STL. Can this be loaded into Netfabb? Well, yes it can, and we will show you in the webinar of tomorrow.
Yes,
so
we were just discussing that today.
Exactly, so this will be shown tomorrow directly. We won't cover it now. I hope that's good for you. If you join tomorrow, we can show you everything about this.
Yes. So I think, so it seems that everybody's happy with all the answers that we have been giving today. Thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate the time that you guys are supplying us and spending with us here. It really makes a difference to get the information across correctly to everyone. And like Robin already mentioned, this is just one of many webinars that we have in mind, and the next webinar we will cover some Netfabb Basics number 2, where we will look into more detail regarding the automated workflows and also the manual workflows that are involved in Netfabb. Okay, so
hope you guys enjoyed this one.
yes,
We can see already some of you are really glad that we did it. So thank you very much for being that cheerful to us.
yes,
We all also like this. So like you said, if you want us anything to cover to be covered in one of the following webinars, just let us know again. And I think with this word we just say bye.
Thank
Have
you
a
very
nice
much.
day. Stay tuned and stay three-dimensional.